Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 2022 Terry Vaughn Referee Academy. We have a wonderful show and production today for you today. Kind of some rules of engagement here first and foremost. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A section or in the comments. We have individuals monitoring that timeline. Just please be respectful about those comments being in there, as there might be a lot of you individuals typing in. We might be missing some stuff. Today, I'm going to go through some introductions for you of our speakers and guest speakers, but first I want to give you a little bit of a rundown of our timeline. The introduction is going to be from 8 to about 8:30. We might be running a little bit short on that, so we'll start with our first guest speakers as soon as we can. We'll have Julie Tobin come on and talk to you about OSI and her new stuff in the production line, as well as some raffle prizes that we might be giving off to you today. Our first guest speakers are going to be Margaret Domka and Sky Arthur Banning. They're going to be talking about mental health and officiating. It's going to be about 8:30 to 9:30. We might be starting a little bit short on that, a little bit earlier. From 9:30 to 10 a.m., pardon me. From 9:30 to 10 a.m., we're going to take our first break, give everybody a little bit of time to go grab some breakfast. As we know, it's pretty early for most of you, especially on the West Coast. And we have individuals joining us from probably across the world like we did last year. So having some breaks in between there would be very beneficial for everybody. 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., we're going to have NYSOA's Ben Trevino come on and talk about several different topics. We're going to have coaches and referee relationships, as well as talking about the national referee shortage and what we can do to improve that. From there, we're going to transition into our next guest speaker, which will be Mark Ketelesic. We're going to be talking about modern positioning and movement. So we'll have some nice visuals there for you with several videos and a chance for some discussion happening there. After that, we're going to take our lunch break. It's going to be about an hour long. You're welcome to stay on board here and communicate with me. I'll be hanging out, but I will grab some lunch in the meantime. But feel free to go out, grab some lunch, go to your kitchen. I know most of you are doing this from the comfort of your own home. So do whatever you need to do to relax for that first or that lunch hour. After that, we're going to come in and talk with Candace and her panel on mentoring women officials. And that's going to be a very interesting discussion, and you'll see some new faces as well as some familiar faces from earlier this morning. After that, we're going to go into our third break, technically. It'll be about a 30-minute break. So from 2 to 2:30, you're going to step away, do whatever you need. But again, you're welcome to stay on and communicate with us through chat, or maybe we'll do a hangout room. We'll talk about that a little bit later. After that, we have Joe Fletcher coming on to talk about helpful tips for AR assistant referees. After that, our show will be concluding. We'll have our closing remarks, some words, and we're going to do some raffle item giveaways. And after that, the show will be concluded. You're welcome to stay on board. We'll have a hangout session like we did last year and go from there. So if you have, without any further ado, I'm going to pass this along to Julie Tobin to let her talk about her production and what they're doing at OSI and all the exciting things.
Thanks, Assad. Julie Tobin with Official Sports. In case some of you don't know me, Official Sports has been supporting the Terry Vaughn Academy for a number of years. I think I've lost count, which is a wonderful thing. So it's great that Iowa has done this for so many years, one, to provide mentoring and training to referees, as well as to support Terry Vaughn overall. And that's why I'm here. So we have a couple of new products. Sean is modeling the quarter zip from last year, but with the team has developed a new logo this year. So what we did is develop a couple new products. So things that are very unique to the TVRA. And the one thing that we also love is that when we do this every year, we then see referees popping up at various events wearing the TVRA specific product. And why it's so important is that what Official Sports does is we give 100% of the sales of these products to Terry and his family. So purchasing this not only supports Huntington's disease awareness, but also supports someone who's part of our overall referee community, Terry Vaughn. And that's why we're all here. So new products this year. Well, the quarter zip, we've updated it with the new logo, Team Vaughn on the back. We've got the HD wristbands that we've had for a number of years, but new this year is the t-shirt. And we have special pricing for the next 3 weeks. So the t-shirt is $15, the quarter zip is $18. And what we've also done is package these 3 products together in a kit. So the quarter zip, the t-shirt, the HD wristband, $30. Adding on to that, these are all available to purchase on our website. You go to our website, you can click through buy, so you don't have to call. You can do it on any of your breaks. But what you'll also receive is free shipping. When you purchase one of the TVRA products, now through April 4th, you will get free shipping on your entire order. So again, something that you can use to support Terry Vaughn and family, as well as to stock up for the upcoming spring season. So there are, like I said, OSI or officialsports.com available right now to purchase, and or we'll send this out afterwards with links. So we hope that everyone takes advantage of, one, free shipping, and this is a way to support Terry and his family. Great cause. Next, we have our raffle items. As Assad said, these will be raffled off at the end, so we hope you're all still there. But some new products. So we have a brand new backpack that we brought in over the holiday season. So we're going to raffle that off. A couple what we're calling off the field kits, one for spring, one for summer. So long sleeve quarter zip with pants, a long sleeve golf shirt with shorts, and then a couple different accessories. So beanie and our very popular gear organizer. I think that brought in a year ago. But great for officials to keep all those the whistles, the cards, everything in one place. So again, something very referee specific. Again, this will be raffled off at the end. So in closing, thank you to everyone for the continuing support of Official Sports. We're very proud to say this is our 38th year working solely to support soccer referees. And I can honestly say we are the referees' biggest fans. So always let us know if you need anything. And we hope everyone has a great meeting today. Thanks.
Thanks, Julie, for all the awesome items. I'll actually be contacting you after today. I need to place an order. So thank you again for everything you do for us. We really do appreciate it, and keep up the good work. All right, next we're going to move on to a very special individual here within the Iowa Referee Committee. He's been on with us for ever since I've been a referee, and then even before that. So I believe his years of service were about 10 years. So I will pass it on to Chip and Tyler. And Tyler, I'll let you do the talking. So thank you.
Hey there, everybody. My name's Tyler Turner. I'm the state referee registrar, and I currently sit on the board with the referee committee. And I have an honor today of speaking a little bit about Chip Walaska, who is our recently retired state director of instruction. I want to set aside a few minutes to kind of attempt to acknowledge some of the many accomplishments Chip has had over the many years that he has served the referee committee. Chip started refereeing back in the 90s and has refereed in USSF, high school, AYSO, college stuff. He's kind of done everything. And I'm sure most of you guys have seen him somewhere out on the fields over the years. He was instrumental in getting the Cedar Rapids region of AYSO off the ground back in the 90s. And that kind of started Chip's first involvement with the board as the AYSO representative to the IRC. From there, Chip served 5 years as a state youth referee administrator, and he led the Iowa delegation at youth regionals each of those years. Not to diminish any of kind of those old past accomplishments, but I think the biggest contribution that Chip's made to our committee and to Iowa is the last 10 years that he spent as the state director of instruction. So Chip's an innovator, and from day one as SCI, he was always on the lookout for whatever new tools were available to increase the effectiveness of the instructors and the instruction that we were putting out here in the state of Iowa. from social media, in particular the Facebook page for Iowa soccer referees, to building out our website, Box, MailChimp, Huddle, and a ton of other tools. Chip constantly wanted to stay ahead of the game, all while operating on a shoestring budget. Chip's had a massive impact on the continued growth of this event, the TVRA. There was a strong event already going on, and he built off of that for many years and is continuing the legacy of the TVRA. He also led the charge that grew our annual referee numbers in Iowa to over 2,200 registered referees in 2019, a number that unfortunately I don't think we'll ever be able to see again. But one of the big things that has changed a lot over the years is the grassroots or entry-level course has changed so much. So back in 91, before most of you guys were probably even born, Chip took his entry-level course and was taught straight out of the law book. Like no multimedia, 16 hours, 4-night event, just like an endurance event. And that changed, to the overhead transparencies back in the 2000s and now to the digital, like video-rich training that we're all accustomed to. That most recent transition was championed by Chip here in Iowa during his tenure as SDI and way before U.S. Soccer was really providing resources to state associations. Chip was developing content right here in-house and always working to provide Iowa referees with the highest level training available. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we've all had to transition to the Learning Center through U.S. Soccer, which has been a very trying and difficult time for all of us. But I cannot tell you how much worse that would have been without all the work Chip did to resolve the many bugs that the system has had. Chip did so much work on this transition. And I also want to give Sue, his wife, a big thanks for putting up with all of our frustrations during that time. Chip is always there to answer a phone call, a text, an email, which is a rare character trait nowadays. And there are a few folks out there that are better at bouncing ideas off of. Over the many years, Chip has been a mentor to so many referees in Iowa, a colleague to committee members across the country, and certainly an amazing friend. To say you'll be sorely missed doesn't begin to explain our sentiments, Chip. Your hard work, dedication, and commitment are unmatched. And on behalf of the Iowa Referee Committee, your fellow SRC members and SDIs across the country, and most importantly, the referees of Iowa, we want to present you with this token of our appreciation. Thanks so much, Chip.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you very much. And the name is spelled correctly and everything else. So thank you very much. I don't want to say a lot following Tyler, but I have to say that at the risk of appearing corny, I love this job and was proud to be the state director of instruction for Iowa. It was something that I wanted, and I very much was pleased to get it back in January of 2012. So it was an honor and a privilege, and I truly enjoyed serving the referees in Iowa. But I believe that 10 years, as Assad mentioned, that's long enough. It's time to bring in new people, fresh blood, so to say, different perspectives, new ways of addressing issues and solving problems, because the landscape is quite different today. But enough of that. Thank you. I really appreciate this.
Cool.
Chip, thank you for everything you have done for us. I know you've done a lot for me personally, especially these last couple of years since you've asked me to kind of help with the organization of the Terry Vaughn Referee Academy. The countless phone calls, the frustrations, the text messages exchanged. So I appreciate everything you've done. I know I've known you for a short period of time, but it's really good to get to know you, especially over these last couple of years. So well-deserved. Enjoy retirement. I will still be calling you and texting you and staying in touch, especially with everything that we need for the Terry Vaughn Referee Academy.
Good.
So thank you.
Looking forward to hearing from
you. Wonderful. Thanks, Chip. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate everything you guys have done. All right, we're running a little bit of a head schedule. I was hoping we'd have some other Iowa Referee Committee members on, but they got busy with other stuff. So unfortunately, we won't have them be able to do their little spiel, but we'll go ahead and start our show. So we'll go on with our first presentation. I'm just going to do, before we do that, again, I'm going to do a little bit of a quick rundown for everybody as we've had new individuals attend. The first presentation we're going to have is Margaret Domka and Sky Arthur Banning. We're going to be talking about mental health and officiating, which is a topic that is extremely overlooked. And I think with the pandemic, it's been kind of brought to light about how important it is and our mental health is. As everybody knows, we suffer through a lot while we're out on the field, especially throughout the youth game with parents not understanding the laws of the game. And then a lot of people, unfortunately, get the brunt end of it, and that can impact our mental health. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and seeing what they have to bring to the table. So first, our run of show is going to be mental health and officiating, starting now until about 9:30. Margaret and Sky, we're going to let you run a little bit longer. So if you have any additional things you want to add, or we can make the Q&A session a little bit longer. Then after that, we're going to take our first break, step away, and just go grab some breakfast. I know it's super early for a majority of the people. I know Sky is joining us from California, which is 6 o'clock right now, 6:16 up there. So thank you for taking time out of your day to do that. After that, we're going to have Ben Torino come on with NYSOA and talk about have a coaches panel. We'll have a discussion about how we can improve refereeing and coach interactions and that relationship that we build. How can we improve that, as well as talking about the national referee shortage and what we can do to help with that out. Mark Adolesic is going to step on after that from about 11 to 12, and we're going to talk about modern positioning and movement. After that, everybody's going to go ahead and take a lunch break. Food is important, and I do like my food, so we'll go ahead and step on from there. And then once we come back, Candace and her panel are going to talk about women officiating and how we can do a better job of mentoring and improve that relationship as well. From 2 to 2:30, we'll take a quick break again. As you notice, we've included a lot of breaks in here because sitting in front of a screen for over 8 hours is dueling. I know most of you guys do that at work anyway, so I don't want to make your Saturday feel dreadful. So after that, we'll have Joe Fletcher come in and talk about helpful hints for assistant referees. Once we're done with all of that, we'll have a hangout session like we did last year. You're welcome to stay aboard, talk with me, and then whoever's on board, we'll have a good conversation like we did there, and we'll do some prize giveaways. So make sure you stay for that. We have a lot of cool prizes from OSI, as well as some prizes that we decided to buy ourselves. We have 4 gift cards to give away, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Margaret, Sky, thank you for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Like I said, it's something that is often overlooked in everyday aspect, especially officiating. Since we have a little bit of extra time, I was going to go ahead and do an introduction, but I think you guys would do a better job of introducing yourselves than I would. I know I've met Margaret several times through regional events and her being a presenter at previous Terry Vaughn Referee Academy, but I don't know Margaret as well as I would like to. And Sky, unfortunately, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, so I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more. So without further ado, I know nobody wants to listen to me talk, so I'll go ahead and pass on the mics to you guys.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Assad. We are really delighted to be here and be with all the referees this morning. This is a group that we are clearly passionate about, as both of us have been in the referee community for a very long time. And so it's great to be with all of you and be able to share. So we will introduce ourselves and share a little bit more about who we are as we go. But the first thing we like to do is just go on to the first slide of our presentation to give everyone a chance to respond to a poll if you haven't done so yet. So we saw that poll. If you were on just a few minutes early, you saw this poll come up during the intro slides, during that countdown. So now here it is again. If you are among the first 100, you'll be able to answer. So I think that here we have 101 right now. So we should definitely have everybody be able to answer at this point. So we would love it if you could just take a moment to either go to the link, that www.slido, and then use the code mental health or MH and sport, or you can just scan the QR code directly, and then it will ask you a question. And so if you can respond to that, and you can respond multiple times, you do not need to respond only once. If you can respond multiple times, that would be great. So as you are working on that, It will tell you a little bit about who you are so you can listen and multitask. But Sky and I have founded the new not-for-profit organization, the U.S. Center for Mental Health and Sport. And so we are just that. We are a not-for-profit organization, recognizing that right now there is a need for bringing mental health initiatives into sport environments. And so that is our goal with our organization, is to bring optimal mental health to sport organizations throughout the country. And today we're going to provide you with some information about who we are as an organization, what it is that we do, how we can continue to help referees beyond just today, but also give you some insight into the type of training that we do, excuse me, the type of training that we do, the type of information that we provide, and give you a snippet of some information that we think is really important for you to know today and carrying forward, but also gives you an example of what additional education we can provide to you beyond just today. So here is that slide again. So we'll just stay on it for like another 10 seconds if you haven't had a chance to scan the QR code or look up the link. Remember, it's MH and sport is your code for getting in. And then we can move on from there into a little bit more about who we are and our presentation today. So this is me. Oh, my slide advancer is not working at the moment. So let me just, so you can work on the questions while I reload momentarily.
Did you change the batteries?
It's my cell phone, so my cell phone is the clicker.
There we go.
Now it works. All right. Okay. So as we said, at the U.S. Center for Mental Health and Sport, we acknowledge that right now there is truly a crisis around our country regarding mental health. And we also believe that everyone who is involved in sport is part of a community. That involves the players, the coaches, the administrators, and of course the officials. All of us are part of this officiating family. And it's so important to us that we take advantage of the relationships that you all have so that you can support each other, not just on the field, but with all of the challenges that we face. And sometimes those challenges, as Assad talked about, sometimes those challenges can come from on the field because we know that there are often criticisms of what we do, but it can also come from off the field. It can be pressures from within our own community. Sometimes that can happen, but it can also be things that aren't even related to soccer, but we bring it with us when we're officiating. And it's the people around us, it's the officials around us who can help us work through some of those pieces. And so when we're talking about mental health, we believe in an approach where we are really leveraging the entire community. So all of the referees around us and all of the players around us and all of the coaches around us, we can utilize our communities to help everyone. Unfortunately, we know that just in the last week, the soccer community has suffered a tragedy, and we don't want any more of these. And so therefore, this is why we're doing what we're doing, is to try to prevent more of these. But we also believe that everyone in this community, all of you as referees, it is also up to you to help be active in this, be proactive, and help prevent future issues, and help make sure that all the officials around you are not struggling, but have opportunities to get the help that they need and have optimal mental health.
So we can start with just sort of talking about some of the numbers, and it sort of helps us put things in perspective, I think, as we look at 1 in 5 youth and adults experience a mental health disorder each year. And again, that could be something like depression over a short period of time. But we know that looking at those numbers, and this is sort of pre-COVID numbers, we're still looking at post-COVID numbers right now, that a number of us within the community are struggling at any given point in time. And from that, we need to then recognize, we sort of can extrapolate out to even just within our sport communities, what that might look like. So we've got some numbers just as some examples. in terms of how many folks might be. And we're looking at a small club here as an example with 10 teams. Given those numbers, there might be 36 people over 10 teams that are struggling with mental health at any given point in time, over the course of the year. With 50 teams, a little bit larger club, that's 180 people. And with 100, pardon?
Players specifically, right?
Players, yes, because we're in that, yes. And with 100 teams, right, we're obviously a much bigger club still, 360 potential players over any course of the year that might be struggling with the mental health crisis. We add on coaches to that. We add on a few more, 2, 10, and 20. Again, so now we're starting to see sort of the cumulative effects of things. And then we add on parents again, we're looking at the whole referee community, or we're looking at the whole sport community rather, in this case, 36, 180, and 360 again. And then the totals for us are the numbers really that are probably most impactful. And we did a presentation earlier this year and, went to folks and said, if those folks have a 100 team club, how many of you would be really, really excited about having a positive impact on 740 people over the course of the year in your club in terms of mental health? And every single one of them put up their hand. And I think it's important for us to recognize that, again, just sort of the numbers of folks within our club in any given year that might be struggling with mental health, and our ability to positively impact them if we take note and are able to recognize some of the signs and symptoms that we'll take you to in a minute. So this is obviously the referee community, and we want to make sure that we're also touching on referees. Lots of small sort of regional referee committees might have 100 referees, again, youth and adults, versus 1,000 referees. And I think we looked, Margaret's originally from Wisconsin, and Wisconsin had several thousand, right, Margaret? South Carolina, we are not quite at 1,000. But lots of states certainly have those numbers of referees. And again, so any given year, the youth and then the adults. So the cumulative totals, again, a small group of 100 referees, 20 folks in your meeting today. We've got 103 participants listed. So of those 103, based on this sort of the statistics of our national averages, 20 of us might be struggling with mental health over the course of this year at any given point in time. And really that's the most important piece for us as sort of why we're on and why we want to have an impact is not only to bring more awareness to it, but to allow people to sort of understand what it might be and how we can help.
Yeah, so when we think about how many people are on today, we've got just over 100 participants. So it is quite possible that we have 20 people on with us in our family today who are struggling with a mental health issue and could use some support. So it's important for us to keep this in mind, that this isn't something about them over there, that this doesn't happen to anyone. It is absolutely among us, despite the fact that we don't talk about it nearly as much as we should. So a little bit more about who we are. I am Margaret Domka, and as I told you before, so I'm a former FIFA referee. I still am currently a referee. I've been refereeing now for 29 years, and I spent 10 of those as a FIFA referee. And I also did referee at the Women's World Cup in 2015. Along with my refereeing, I also am working on a PhD at Clemson University, so finishing up on the dissertation phase of that. And my research there is focused on mental health in sport as a result of all of my experiences in the referee community. And in sport in general, I really believe that this is such an important topic, and we need to do more to make sure that we're bringing initiatives to communities around the country. And so this is where it has started from for me. Sky?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Sky Arthur Banning. I'm an associate professor at Clemson University. Have been for 16 years and co-founder of the United States Center for Mental Health and Sport with Margaret. I've been a national referee coach for a number of years. I was a national referee, obviously, prior to that. And since 2014, I've been the head of referees for the International Federation of CP Football. So I get to travel the world officiating Paralympic soccer, essentially. And then just recently here in the United States, am leading the charge for referees for the blind soccer game. And that's not blind soccer referees, that's referees for the blind soccer game. So kind of making that distinction. We're trying to grow blind soccer in the United States leading up to LA 2028. So we have a national team for the Paralympic Games. So really heavily involved at the international level with Paralympic soccer and the officiating side of that.
Yeah. So we've already told you a little bit about the mental health crisis that we are in. And this crisis is being recognized all over the country, not just within sport, but also outside of sport. The US Surgeon General released an advisory report in December asking people and organizations and industry and everyone all over the country to start being really proactive with figuring out ways to support mental health. But it's important then to also understand, what do we mean by mental health? When we say 1 in 5 people are struggling with a mental health disorder, what is a mental health disorder? So a mental health disorder is a condition that affects your mood, thinking, behavior, and ultimately really can impact your day-to-day living and your ability to relate to others. So we know that everybody can have days that they're happy or sad or things can change in life, but we generally think about mental disorders being things that last 2 weeks or more, and then it becomes a disorder more so than just a bad day. And so this is what we're referring to whenever we talk about mental health disorders. There are a whole variety of different types of mental health disorders. Typically, the ones that we see most often within soccer or within sport are things like anxiety, depression, self-harm and suicide or suicidal thoughts, eating disorders, alcohol and substance abuse. So as we're talking today, these are the types of things that we focus on as an organization. So we are absolutely not about performance. We do believe that if you are mentally healthy, you're probably also going to perform better on the field as a referee. But our goal is not to prepare you for how you go out and give your best performance. We believe that's important as well. But our organization is about how do we make sure that you are experiencing life satisfaction and that you're happy with your refereeing and that you feel like you are well and not just struggling to get through every day. So that is our goal as an organization. When we talk about this mental health crisis, part of the reason it is such a crisis is because the mental health issues in and of themselves are definitely problematic. People are struggling. We don't want anyone to struggle. We don't want anyone to feel like they're suffering from day to day. But in addition to that, suicide is definitely a very huge risk factor for individuals who are suffering from mental disorders. And so 90% of individuals who die by suicide have shown signs of mental health concerns prior to their death. And the suicide rate, along with those mental health disorder rates, have just continued to rise and have gone up by 35% since 1999. That is a huge increase in 22 years to see it go up by that much. So we know that we need to take steps to stop this. And as an organization, there are multiple reasons that we have decided that it makes sense to start integrating this into sport. One of those is that 58% of US youth participate in sports. And that's not just the players, that includes the officials. We have youth officials as well. And so these numbers include that. If we add in adults, because we have coaches and we have officials and we have administrators, there's well over 100 million. I believe that that would be a low estimation of the number that are involved with sports. So first of all, we can reach so many people within sport. We also know that there's a network of care. Everyone who's on today knows that this referee community is amazing, that we all understand some of the challenges we go through. We can support each other. We know that we want to perform our best. We can compete against each other, but we can also support each other at the same time. And we truly care. And so that is part of what we want to utilize. We spend a lot of time together, and so we can make a difference. And then another piece is that research has found that coaches can be some of the most influential mentors regarding mental health in a young person's life. And that isn't, again, that's not just for players. So many of the things that we see today, it talks about athletes and coaches, but referees are athletes and referee coaches are coaches. And even when we're working as peers, but one is working as a mentor in a mentor role more, that is a coach. And so in our world, in the referee world, all of our peers, all of our mentors, all of our referee coaches can be those influential mentors, and we truly can and do make a difference for other people's mental health. So our approach is to have training that is similar to first aid. we all know that first aid is, you don't become a medical doctor when you learn first aid, but what you learn is how to recognize when there's an emergency, how to help stabilize the person to make sure that whatever you stop the bleeding or whatever it is that's the biggest crisis right at this moment, to make sure that they don't die or something more serious doesn't happen. And then you move on and get help. And this is exactly what we do in the mental health field, is that we want people to recognize the signs and symptoms if there is a mental health crisis going on, to be able to understand how to stabilize that person so that they don't harm themselves or others. And then finally, to understand where to go to get help. Right now, we know a lot of people don't really know that. When it comes to a mental health issue, who should I contact for support? And so we'll be talking to you about some of this today, but it also is included in our additional training that we do. Oh, Sky, I think you're muted.
I'm trying to be quiet here in a hotel room. So I wanted to take folks through a scenario. Just Margaret and I are certainly more used to presenting in person and trying to be more engaging, more interactive. So I'm going to have folks typing in the chat box as we go through a scenario in just a second. But as we think through some of the risk factors, we came up with sort of, I think, a real realistic example in the referee community that might trigger something for us and sort of help us realize that some of these things are really possible and things that we can not only have happen, but also how we can help. So we have a young 22-year-old regional referee. We'd love to have all the states would love to have a whole host of those, right? We know we've got a long career ahead, hopefully. They've graduated from university in May, so an upcoming graduation and starting a new job across the country. So we've got some potential change. We'll good?
Yes. Is it working? Okay.
Yep. They have just been appointed to the pro tier system as an assistant referee. Really exciting, right? 22-year-old regional referee. Someone's noticed me, or a number of folks have noticed me. Pro wants me in their tier track, and I can sort of see this vision of starting for the future. And national referee candidate for the 2022 season. That should be current instead of past tense, but that's all right. So lots of really exciting things going on in our lives. Oh, you skipped one.
Yeah, I know. It's not working.
But we failed our most recent assessment. And we've just torn our ACL, which is going to require surgery. Again, not out of the realm of possibility. Running up and down the touch line, and a cameraman or a dog jumped in front of us, and we twisted a knee, and all those stars in our eyes are potentially starting to slip a little bit. So what I'd like us to do, just in the chat box, is sort of put in some potential things that we should notice, things that might be risk factors for us in that little, again, that scenario, that we think are things that might cumulatively add up to something that's as a concerned peer, we might be wanting to think about. And so I'll just start reading some of them off. Trauma, potentially drinking more. So Scott's thinking already ahead of what might else be happening. Increased frustration over time. Withdrawal from friends, anger, right? Alteration of projected career path, frustration, depression because of the injury. Good, how are we going to cope with the setback? Some mood changing. And I think we're isolation, lack of local support networks. Good, because we've moved away. Excellent. Anxiety, sort of the unknown. Yeah. Good. All right. So there's sort of lots of opportunity, lots of elements there. withdrawing from the social circles. Because we've moved away, we've got to create new social circles potentially. Excellent. All right, so let's look at some of the risk factors, and then we'll actually also look at some of the protective factors. So that was really good. There's lots of folks sort of cluing in on what are some of the pieces. We've just had the death of Miss Meyer at Stanford, and again, I'm certainly not going to draw conclusions about that, but we can sort of see similar risk factors in many cases. But so some of the risk factors that folks have brought up already, or that we know that sport provide. I think we always talk about sport has all these protective factors and all these wonderful things, and we lose sight of the fact that sport also has a number of risk factors. So obviously, the injury that we just talked about, financial pressures and financial stress, performance pressures, and again, as officials, we absolutely have performance pressures. We're always talking about when the referee coach shows up, don't change your performance, keep doing the same thing, because we're not going to help you if you change your performance. Let's keep doing the same thing, but we also know there's pressure there. There's pressure to perform. We're going to advance in our career just as any other athlete might. Travel and time away from family, those missed opportunities, perhaps. My daughters are really excited that I'm home much more now, as when we had national badges or FIFA badges, we were gone a lot. And so those opportunities are often missed in terms of risk factors. Cancellations, postponement of assignments. We get rainouts, we finally get that PRO assignment, and we miss a flight, or the weather hits, or things like that. Obviously, some LGBTQ sort of gender identity challenges. End of career retirement. Again, for end of career, it could be end of a really short career. In this case, with the knee injury, it could be coming to the end of a long career. When we look at athletes, it could be ending. High school could be the end of your career in terms of athletics, and then all the challenges that come with that. Your identity. I've been a referee. I've got boxes and boxes of referee clothing, and who am I now if I'm no longer a referee? And who do I identify with, and to what is my community? All those things tend to sort of exacerbate the underlying mental health challenges. And certainly if we already have some, then that's going to be even more difficult for us. And again, sort of that identity loss. Who am I if I'm not a referee, but now I'm transitioning into administration? Am I still part of that referee community? I know I can still perform on the fields, but I also know that I can help in an administrative role much, much more easily. So some of those challenges that come with again, the sport environment and particularly the referee communities. But there's also some protective factors. And so Margaret will pull those up in a second. As my phone just closed, there we go. Right, we know that parents are the most influential adults in a kid's life. But the two most influential non-parental adults in a kid's life are teachers and coaches. Again, for an athlete, that's obviously the coach. For a referee, can that also be the regional, national, and sort of local grassroots coaches and assessors and mentors? I think we can have much more of a role in that respect. We spend hours and hours with these folks oftentimes, particularly on the road. The NCAA season is a grueling season, but we spend a lot of time with one another, hotel rooms or those sorts of things. And that's certainly important for us. But also allows us that opportunity, if I'm spending that much time with some of my peer referees, to recognize that, Jim's been off the last couple of weeks, or Sarah's been off the last couple of weeks, and I really need to pay more attention to that, and I'm going to check in a little bit more regularly. The physical activity certainly acts as a protective factor if we're able to get it. Again, injuries certainly highlight those things that may take away from those opportunities. Margaret's always talking about, regardless of the busyness of the day, she's got to get out and get her exercise, and that sort of is an outlet for stress for her. So we've just learned as we're working together that, all right, if we're just getting stressed, let's go for a walk. Let's get out and exercise together. Let's go on a training session together. We'll go run some hills, and at least then when we come back to the work environment, we can focus more. We can sort of, go through things a little bit better. Building confidence. And again, I can't stress enough to all of my referees that this should be on your resume. This should be on your vita, because it absolutely helps you in a lot of the sort of the tasks of daily work, and how you perform better. And again, for us, the reason I love the referee community is just sort of the camaraderie, the socialization, those sorts of activities that we do outside of the referee world, or even just chatting in the locker room, right after the game. How are things? Hey, let's go for a soda. Those kinds of things. So lots of protective factors as well. We just need to sort of highlight them at times and remember what they're about.
Yeah, so I would add to this because I saw it was in the chat box. That there was a question about could.
Oh. Where are we? Margaret, are you still going?
Sky, can you take it?
Okay. Can folks still hear me? Yes. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. So she's trying to get the Slido pulled up, I think. Can't hear her. Okay, so it's the Slido issue, lag on her end. That's excellent. Here we go. Able to get the Slido pulled up. So these were a number of the pieces. This was the Slido, folks. Again, thanks for contributing to the input. As we look at this Slido, right, the larger the word, that tends to be the more number of folks that sort of put those comments in. And so we like to pull this up just particularly around conversations with mental health. And so if we look at those words, you give me a sense of what you see in those words. Obviously the words themselves, but are there any patterns, any themes that you're working on? So again, we can go in the chat box. We can sort of talk about some of those things. Are there any patterns, any themes? George, thank you. Yeah, large focus on negative and not as much on how to address it, right? So a lot of the comments in there are sort of negatively leaning. Anxiety, depression, suicide, unseen, helpless, stressness, versus right, some of the positives are a little less stated, right? So they're smaller ones. Sanity, calm, resiliency, support, but certainly not stated as often. And that tends to be the pattern that we see fairly often when we ask folks to do this, is that we tend to skew toward the negative when we talk about mental health. We would venture, in fact, we probably should try at one point, Mark, we probably should try something similar and ask people to put in physical health elements. And I could almost promise that the physical health components would be much more positively skewed rather than mental health, which appears here to be much more negatively skewed. And again, that just sort of highlights, I think, the societal stigma around mental health. And again, one of the reasons that we have started the organization and trying to bring this into a very heterogeneous opportunity is to really try and bring both those sides of things together. Mental illness versus mental health. Good, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, so let's look at sort of the mental health continuum. Margaret, are you back?
I think I'm back.
Yes, there we go.
All right. So thanks for covering for me. So what we really want to make sure that everyone understands is that mental health is not a bad thing. We all have mental health. Every single one of us have mental health, but mental health falls along a continuum. And so sometimes mental health is languishing and sometimes we have optimal mental health. And the truth is that all of us at some point in our lives, we're going to have changes in our mental health. It is not different than physical health. As Sky was just indicating, there are times that our physical health is not ideal, that we have injuries or that we have to work through some things that are going on with our bodies, and we recover and then we move on, and then our health is great again. Our physical health and our mental health is much the same, that there could be times that we're struggling. That is never permanent. There's always hope for moving on and getting better and recovering in the future. And so then we move into optimal mental health, but there are times that we will struggle too. And this week or this month, it could be me struggling, and in 6 months from now, it could be you struggling. So again, it's important that we use this community and recognize that mental health is not permanent, but we all need to support each other through those moments that it is languishing for us. So one of the keys for us then, when we are talking about mental health and we want to have a conversation about mental health, if we can show that slide screen again. Back to you, there we go. The main key when starting any conversation about mental health, we can give you exact words to use. We can tell you exactly how to run the conversation, except that we're not, because there's no such thing as exact words and exactly what you need to do in the conversation. But something that every single one of us can do when we have concerns that someone else is struggling with mental health is simply to start the conversation. We know that this is a little bit awkward sometimes, particularly because there is so much stigma around mental health. It's even though we saw those numbers earlier and the numbers are staggering for how many people struggle with mental health, we don't talk about it. It's like it's shameful to talk about it, and it should not be. We all have mental health, but it is hard to start a conversation because it feels awkward. However, by doing so, we can reduce the stigma and make it okay for someone to express that they are struggling with mental health. And we know that particularly in the sport community, that there is a culture of toughness within refereeing too. We don't ever want to let people know that there could be a weakness. We have to show that we are able to make decisions, that we're in charge. We have to put on that facade. And that's great on the field, but we don't need to have that all the time. It's okay for us to talk about our own mental health struggles, and it is okay for us to start the conversation with others. When we do this, it really communicates to them that we care enough to have that conversation. We feel like it may be insulting for them, but most people will respond in a way in which they understand that you cared enough to ask the question about whether or not they were struggling, even if it turns out that they were not struggling, that there was something else going on. Most people will appreciate that you cared enough to take the time to have a conversation with them about it. So, and these conversations can ultimately save lives. But we don't typically have these conversations. And just in the chat box again, take a guess. What do you think the average amount of time is for a person to wait to report or seek help for a mental health disorder? So someone knows for themselves that they probably are struggling, but they don't report it to anyone, they don't talk to anyone. How long do you think it usually takes for that to happen? Okay, so we're seeing months, over a year, weeks. Some people say never report, some people say at least a year. So we've got a variety of different answers. The answer is over 10 years. It takes people, on average, it takes people over 10 years to report that they are struggling with a mental health disorder. Now, if we were to imagine that someone broke their leg or broke their arm or had any other physical impairment, what would happen if you waited 10 years to see a doctor? Just think for yourselves. Would that injury would it be more difficult to then repair, or would it be just the same as 10 years ago? And probably all of us know it's going to be a much more serious recovery process. It's going to be much more difficult. Now, there's always hope. There's always hope for getting better. But it does make it more difficult. So the earlier we can catch these things, the sooner we can start talking about them, the more comfortable we can make people that it's okay to reach out for support, the more likely it is that they're going to recover a lot faster and have to go through a lot less to get to the place that they want to be to have optimal mental health. So 10 years, an incredible number. We don't want people to wait that long. So this is where all of you come in. And we are going to, in a little bit, we're going to show you some information about depression and how to recognize depression, how to talk through depression with someone. But the reason that we are doing this is because, as we talked about earlier, you are all part of the referee community, and it's super important that each and every one of us feels that we have a role in this. When someone is struggling with a mental health issue, our philosophy at the USCMHS is that the first people who are going to notice and who can be the most supportive are those who are closest to us. So in this diagram, athletes, that's you. You're the referees. You are athletes. If a referee is struggling with a mental health issue, it's those who are closest. Their coaches, the referee coaches, your mentors. It is your peers, your other referees. It's your parents or your other family members, your significant others. Those are the people who are most likely to notice that your behavior has changed, that your attitudes have changed, that your moods have changed. And they're that first line of support. But not everyone knows what to do to be an effective support. And that's where we come in. We're the outside circle, trying to provide all of you with the training, the resources, and the pathways to support so that you're able to better support. We've heard from a lot of coaches for youth teams that say, I really suspect that one of my athletes is struggling with a mental health issue, but I'm afraid to ask the question because if they say yes, I don't know what to do. And we don't ever want that to be the case. As we said before, one of the best things that we can ever do is start the conversation. Even if we don't know exactly how to make the conversation go, how to navigate all of it, it doesn't matter. It still is just to start it. That is the key, is to start that conversation. But we are also here to help you understand some of the key pieces to make sure that you can give that person the message that they need and help them find the support that they need. We also are a community organization, which means that it may not just be the referees who are struggling. It could be a referee coach who is struggling. It could be one of your own family members who is not in the referee community at all, or it doesn't seem that they are, but our family members are part of the referee community. They see us go out and do our thing every day, every week, all in the evenings. They are part of this community too. So it may be that we are just providing that support to a family member or to our referee coaches. So everyone who is part of our lives is part of our community, and we can use this information to support all of them. This information is valuable. We are the official mental health and wellness partner of US Youth Soccer. So we have only been in existence for about 6 months now, and we already have established this official partnership. And we hope that through that partnership, our goal is not just to work with the youth athletes and not just to work with the youth coaches, but also truly to work with the referees and the referee community as well. You are part of US Youth Soccer. You are part of US Soccer. You are part of, many of you are part of the college soccer organizations. And so when we talk about the organizations that we partner with and we're working with, all of you as referees are part of that. Sometimes we separate ourselves. We're not separate. We're part of that. So again, just the things that we provide to help support that community is we have mental health training. Today, you're going to get a little snippet of what that looks like. We also provide pathways to support. So who is it? If the support you get from those closest to you isn't enough, where else can you go? And we help provide the connections to those professional mental health support resources that you may need. Our website is a resource hub to learn more about mental health. It's in development. As I said, we're a pretty new organization, but please do visit our website, sign up for our newsletter. We have coach and referee support groups that are going on like monthly so that you can get on and just join a support group. So we have a bunch of things going on, and these are all ways to help support our community. And everything that we do is evidence-based, based on research of a variety of research fellows that we have around the country. So here it is, our introduction to a little bit of training that hopefully after today you can walk away and start getting a good sense of how to have these conversations, how to start the conversations, and be able to make an impact with our peer referees and our referee coaches and everyone around us.
Yeah, and I just was going to circle back to Ray's got a question up there, and Ray, good to virtually see you. I can't actually see you, but nice to appreciate the question. And so Ray's questions around back to some of the risk factors. Why isn't race one of the things listed? And Ray, you're absolutely right. We need to add that in there because it certainly is. One of the components of that is that there wasn't a whole lot of research around sort of the mental health challenges of race, particularly 15, 20 years ago. I have actually just published a Black athlete and mental health article around that. And we absolutely know that race is a challenge, sort of another risk factor for folks, particularly in the sporting environment. Particularly even more so particularly in sporting environments where it may not be their traditional sport. The Black athlete playing hockey, the Latino figure skater, those kinds of things that also then create additional challenges with their mental health risk factors. So that's a great question, right? So we want to, again, just sort of take you through a little snippet of some of the training that we can do, but also obviously provide the information. And that's the most important piece for us is if we can, again, we realize this isn't the sexy, let's watch video clips and have, Margaret, the FIFA referee, take us through some video clip examples. But we also recognize that this soccer community brings something more than just simply the officiating. And if we can save just one life together, we think that all of this sort of information and content, all of our work in this nonprofit has been valuable. So this is, again, just sort of a snippet of, as Margaret said, kind of the first aid CPR model that we take folks through. We're not going to make you experts. And as I'm looking through some of the comments, I can tell that there's certainly folks on here that have some either social work or sort of mental health training as well, which is excellent. I'd encourage you to share that with your communities and sort of be that advocate. That's what we are right now encouraging clubs. And we could probably take you back since I know we've got a little bit of time. Margaret and I went to Scotland and saw how the Scottish FA implemented this sort of mental health training in all of their clubs across the country. We spent a couple of days there, which was rough, let me tell you, a couple of days in Scotland and enjoying some haggis and all the other pieces. But it was really, really neat to see their progress and their sort of importance that they placed on it. But the other piece for them was really they had implemented sort of a chaplain, a sport chaplain within all of their clubs. And obviously chaplain would elicit a different meaning here in the US. But that's one of the pieces for us that we would encourage all of you, and we'll again circle back to this in our takeaways, all of our organizations, all of our referee groups, do we have someone within our organization that someone can turn to and really talk about things like this? And if some of you already have some of that training as a social worker or as a mental health professional, I would encourage you to step up to your SRA or to folks within the organization and say, look, if someone is struggling within Iowa, please send them my way. I want to help. Because again, one of the biggest pieces for us in terms of people not being able to work through their mental health challenges is they don't know where to turn. And if they know that they can turn to the community that they trust the most, in this case, the referee community, and if there's someone within that community that understands their language and understands their struggles, again, either inside or outside, or can help them through the process, then that's really positive. And so again, I would encourage folks, I would encourage all the states to see if they can identify someone within your organization that could be that sort of point person to do that. So we were going to take you through, again, just some of the example training that we do and really just looking at some of the signs and symptoms of depression in this case. In-person training, we typically talk about suicide because obviously that's the most important component for us. But when we can't see you and sort of can't help monitor your emotions or answer the questions the way we'd like to, we wanted to sort of dial it back a little bit. So what are some of the signs and symptoms we might observe in a referee experiencing depression? And again, we'll utilize a chat box since that's sort of one of the few ways we can interact a little bit, make sure folks are still here. We got 140 and how many of us are sipping our coffee or watching EPL? Has EPL started yet? I don't even know. I'm out here on the West Coast for the weekend. And so disengagement, right? So disengaging from the referee community. And I want to talk about that one a little bit as people continue to, as sort of post is, We also know, unfortunately, that referees drop out at such an alarming rate of officiating. And that would always be one of my sort of follow-ups to groups is, if people have dropped out, how are we checking in on them as to why they've dropped out? I don't think we do that well enough. I don't think we look at referee retention enough. But I also am thinking, is it because they've been berated so much to the point where we're challenging their mental health? We're providing, we're not being successful in that case. And do we reach out? If after almost every assessment, I'll check back in with the referee crew just to say, hey, we talked about some positives, but we also talked about some things that you can be working on, particularly after a failed assessment. I want to really make sure that there's some content going there. So disengaged, poor decision-making on the pitch, good. Again, just sort of that loss of focus, maybe over hey, that referee, they don't usually make those kinds of mistakes. I wonder what's going on. Withdrawn, irritability, right? The referee that's raising their voice at players that doesn't normally do that. What's going on? We always talk about, we don't know what's going on with the referee on the field. We don't know what happened to them off the field. And are we able to check in? Berating from players, coaches, and fans. Again, that pressure from outside of the referee community potentially has some of those elements. I've never seen or heard any outraged referees who have chosen not to recertify at the local grassroots assigned level. Yeah, Jesse, I think we need to. I mean, I know you're going to talk today about the referee crisis, and if an employee stopped coming to work and just sort of quit their job and didn't go find another job, I'd certainly want to ask and reach out. I don't know why we aren't doing that in the referee community in terms of retention, but no effort to maintain physical form. Okay, so they've been training really well, and all of a sudden, we're not training. We're not concerned about what we look like or our hygiene kinds of things. Good. So there's lots of really good things in the chat box as well. And again, these are a lot of these pieces we mentioned. So changes in mood, sad, empty, irritability. Those carpool rides are often really valuable conversations, just sort of either in reflection on the ride home or in preparation on the ride to. And if those conversations all of a sudden change because the person's disengaged or sad, do we ask about those things? Are we feeling hopeless, helpless, worthless, guilty about again, comments? Social media has become a great tool to sort of connect us in superficial ways, perhaps. But I think it's important for us to be thinking about, oftentimes people are expressing their emotions through social media. And we actually have one of our research fellows in our organization studies that. How can we pick up on signs and symptoms of depression? Obviously not the symptoms, but certainly the signs of depression through social media and just the comments and language that people are using. And can we sort of continue on with that? So low self-esteem and feelings of aloneness, isolation.
One of this last piece, the feeling alone, this is a huge piece for mental health disorders, is that people often feel alone. And part of this is because of the stigma that we have against mental health. People don't feel comfortable talking to people about it, but we don't want people ever to think that they're the only ones dealing with this and that they're abnormal because of it. And yet this is often how people feel. But when we looked at those numbers, again, we can come back to those numbers we had in the beginning. A lot of people are dealing with this. We don't ever want people to think that they are alone, that they're the only ones dealing with it, or that they have to struggle with it alone. We can help them. They have a support system to be helped. And so it's super important that we let them know they're not alone. So
some of the physical signs, and again, a number of them mentioned in the chat box already, so thank you for that. Fatigue, lack of energy, eating too much, too little, significant weight loss or gain, and again, that inability to concentrate. Again, we're making mistakes on the field that we wouldn't normally have made, as example for the officiating groups. And then some of the words, perhaps, that we may hear, talking very negatively, critical comments about oneself. Again, that's sort of the self-blame and beating someone up sort of emotionally. I can tell you as a professor, students finals week, walking down the hall, clearly on their cell phone. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm just tired of things. a number of professors got up out of their seats and sort of poked their head around the corner to see who it was. And basically one of us decided that we need to at least go ask the question, right? We need to go ask if things are okay, because some of the words that were coming out of her mouth were a number of these kinds of words. And we're like, that we need to at least check in. Finals week are obviously a stressful week. We've all had a less than optimal match. And how many of us are checking in on the referee that we know had a struggle in their last game, and you sort of getting them to the next positive element of what's next. And sort of the obvious things, threatening to hurt oneself or others, comments about not being here, right? Talking, writing, socially. Yeah.
So all of these pieces that we have asterisked at the end, if someone is talking in this way, these are indications that they are having suicidal thoughts. And this goes beyond just having a conversation with them about depression, but this is a point where you do need to reach out and get help. And at the end of this presentation, we have a national suicide hotline, but you can always also call 911. So we don't want to skip over this and pretend that this is just yet another piece of the conversation. We also want to say that if people are speaking negatively or have negative comments about themselves, like, I think at moments we all do this, but it's the change in behavior patterns. It's the change in the type of conversations that they have. It's noticing the pattern that it's happening again and again. It's not the one-off negative comment. It's when you notice their whole demeanor changes, and this is part of how they're expressing that is through their words. And this is part of why the people who are closest to someone know best, and are able to provide that first line of support, because they know what you're like normally, and they can see some of the changes that happen. But again, we cannot emphasize enough these last three. If there's any indication that the person could be considering suicide or self-harm in any way, that please reach out and get help. It is, even if it turns out that wasn't what they were thinking, it is so much better to know that their life will not be taken, will not be lost, because you made the effort to reach out and get help beyond that. I'd rather be wrong and make sure that they're okay than not ask or not get help and find out that there was really something much, much bigger going on. So continuing on with the behaviors as well. So we've done emotions, we've done thoughts or things that they are saying, as well as their behaviors. So they withdraw from family and friends, they act recklessly or start behaviors that they normally don't do, using more alcohol, indecisiveness, taking longer to complete tasks. So all of these things, they might start missing games, as Sky indicated. We should be looking into those things. So their behaviors will indicate that as well, potentially, that they're struggling with depression. So the biggest question that we have for you today is that same slide we said start the conversation. We could ask you the question, or you may be asking us the question, does my help really make a difference though? Does it matter what I say? Does it matter what I do? Can I actually make a change? Now, you may not be able to cause the person to not be depressed anymore if they're struggling with this. They may need some more support for that. But can you make a difference? Absolutely, 100%. Our answer is yes. Yes, yes, your help makes a difference. You could be among the first to notice. You could be among the first to let someone know that you care, among the first to let them know that it's okay to talk about it, that they're not alone, to be encouraging support, all of these things that they may have felt like they can't do because you have the courage to speak up. And one of the main things that we can always do is provide hope. We've said it multiple times, there is always hope for recovery. And people who have struggled with mental health issues, one of the challenges is feeling like, now that I am this way, this is who I am. This is where my life is forever. I'm just stuck in this place, because it's hard to see the way out of it. It's hard when you're in that position to understand how things can get better. And you can provide hope and always let them know that things can and will get better. So the main things that we want to do when we are helping is, first of all, pay attention to what we should not do. We should never dismiss someone's feelings or judge them. We can never step into someone else's shoes and understand their entire circumstance. So it is not up to us to decide whether or not someone has a right to feel depressed. We need to listen to what they have to say, but not judge that. We need to not threaten consequences, but instead just offer help. We also, though, shouldn't make promises that can't be kept. So we can't say, just smile and you'll feel better, or in a week, everything will be great. We don't know that. We can't make promises that we can't keep. We can make the promise that things can get better and they will get better eventually, but we can't make a promise it's going to happen a week from now. We can't make a promise that just because they put a smile on their face, they're going to wake up tomorrow and feel better. That's not necessarily the case. And so we also can't ask people then to just snap out of it. Sometimes mental health disorders for some people are seen as mood things, that if you just decide that you're better, you're better. And if we just tough through it, then we're okay. But mental health disorders are medical disorders. And so someone can't just say, my arm is better after they've broken their arm and all of a sudden it's all healed. We can't necessarily do that for mental health disorders either. So we need to realize that. So when we start the conversation, it's important that we take some steps to make sure it's a meaningful conversation and productive. We can do that by minimizing distractions. So we probably don't want to do that in the middle of a soccer field right before the game starts or something. But maybe it means that after the game or before the game or completely at a separate time, we choose to meet them at a coffee shop, or we meet them in a space that's comfortable for them. Maybe it is at the soccer complex, but it's off in a corner or away from other people kind of, but it's a place that's comfortable for them. We also want to avoid a place where you feel really comfortable, but they do not. So we want to avoid some of the power structures. If we could imagine an office situation, if you bring them into your office, and now they might feel like they're in your space and less comfortable. So try to think about where might be a space that they would be comfortable talking. And then also ensure that you have enough time to actually have the conversation with them so it's not rushed and you're not asking them to talk to you, but then saying, I don't have time for you. So, and then while you are having that conversation, the main things is just to be patient and be yourself. Some people feel like they need to have the perfect words. They need to have the right words. They need to know exactly how to have this conversation. These are hard conversations and it takes courage, but that person is still that person, even if they're struggling with a mental health disorder. And so be yourself, be the friend that they know that you are, that you have been all along. When you ask questions, don't ask yes or no questions, but create a space. We'll give you some examples, but create a space where they are welcome to talk and not just answer with one word and can tell you more about it. And then making sure that you're really listening actively. And so paying attention to what they say and responding to that, but not coming up with solutions before they even talk to you. So we can see that there are a variety of additional options for starting the conversation. So the main thing, again, starting the conversation, there is no single one right or wrong way to do this. And even if you say something that you realize is not quite right and it didn't really seem to help, just say, that didn't work. Let me try again. Let me ask you a different question so I can let you know what I really mean by this. Because sometimes we might say something that comes out the wrong way, and that's okay. The main thing is we start the conversation and talk about it. So here you have some examples of things that you could say. So I'm worried because I've noticed. It seems that you're feeling sad. Would you share with me why? I'm sad that you don't seem to have as much energy for hanging out with me lately. Does anyone have any, just really quickly in the chat box, any comments about what is similar about all of these comments? What is similar about all of these questions and the way that they're being asked? What is the pattern that's being used or what's similar? Any thoughts at all? Okay, so I see some open-ended questions, exactly open-ended questions, giving lots of opportunity for talking. So none of them are yes or no. We're focusing on them rather than our own experiences is great. We're asking for more details. We're engaged. There's not judgment, all of these things. And another piece, so the non-judgmental is important here. If we say things like, you're depressed, tell me why, we start to label them. We start to make it feel like there's something wrong with them. So instead, just focusing on some of the behaviors that we've noticed, I've noticed that you seem to be showing up later than you used to for games. I've noticed that you're missing more games. I've noticed that don't seem as excited about refereeing anymore as you once were. And then we're not pointing fingers and we're not blaming. We're just talking about things that we've noticed and asking them to talk more about it. So when we start conversations, no single right word, just opening up the floor for them to be able to talk in a way that's positive and does not seem judgmental.
Yeah, and I think as Margaret transitions slides, we always get folks to say, what if they don't want to open up? Or what if they don't want to tell you? And I think the easy answer is just allow the door to stay open, right? Keep the door open. If you'd like to chat, I'm here. Whenever you're ready, I'm available, right? Just sort of here's other opportunities, so that at least provides that door to stay open for folks to recognize that you're still not shutting them down. You're just giving them the time to process through when they're ready to have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So we never want to force people to talk, because that's not going to help them, but we leave the door open and let them know that we will be supportive. And the last piece, as we said, we really want to make sure that people understand that they are never alone. So making sure that they understand that we are working together, that you are willing to work together. And they may not want your help specifically, which we should never be offended by that, even if it's someone we're close to, because sometimes people feel like if they accept help from the people who are closest to them, they're putting a burden on you. But maybe they're willing to accept help from someone else. Maybe they're willing to work together with someone else. And that's okay too. So but just making sure that they understand they're not alone through this, and always, always, always letting them know that things can and will get better. And this is a really important slide, so screenshot it, take a picture of it. If you are ever concerned about someone potentially having thoughts of suicide, maybe considering dying by suicide, make sure that you reach out for extra help. So 911, the 988 number is a suicide specific prevention hotline, just like 911 is for medical emergencies. It is supposedly going to be up around the entire country by the end of this year. It is not up everywhere yet. So for right now, this 1-800-273-TALK is the number, but it's transitioning to 988. So that's a great number to know as well. And soon we'll all be able to use that for any suicide concern. Okay, and Skye, I'll let you take this. Yeah, so just going back to the last slide again, if you happen to call 911, you're concerned about someone and there's sort of suicidal thoughts. Often, particularly the larger police forces have crisis intervention specialists within the police force. We've been told by 911 that you should at least ask for that, and that then sends an officer who's more trained in mental health and sort of crisis intervention, which is obviously going to be much more helpful with the mental health crisis that person might be going through. So just sort of our last piece, what can ref coaches, what can assigners or peer referees do to help with someone who we know might be struggling with some depression? Again, remember, any one of those signs, might be, but probably aren't. It's really the cumulative as well as that extended period of time that Margaret talked about, 2 or more weeks, where someone might be feeling those emotions. So what are some things we can do, Margaret? Let's see. So it might be reducing or increasing game count, right? It might be that this person really needs to focus more on themselves and other things, but it might be increasing game count. I know that whenever I was, really needing that community, I wanted more games because that was taking me to the community much more fully. And again, just having that conversation with the official, particularly the officials, sort of regional and national referees. I wanted a U8 game. I didn't want all the stress. I didn't want all the emotion that came with the big game and the fans and the TVs and I'm like, give me a game that I can just go out and have fun with again and kind of relieve me of some of those stressors and just laugh with the kids and with the families. And so, maybe it's something like that where they get to go have an enjoyable match again without all the pressures that come with sort of the heavy game. Maybe setting them on a special game experience, right? If they're qualified, maybe it's a regional event or something, maybe it's take them to the Disney tournament, which is what South Carolina takes a group down all the time. We have actually discussed hosting some referee yoga or mindfulness sessions. And, if there's enough interest, we would certainly be happy to do that on a virtual format, a virtual platform. Reinforce the referee community.
right? Again, we are a family of people, and reinforce that connection point. Again, if there's enough interest, and we're sort of circling this with US Soccer and others, join one of our referee support groups. We're doing a coaches support group right now virtually. And I think it would certainly be helpful to do a referee support group. And again, we're a nonprofit, so we're really looking for ways to, for donors and things like that to generate revenue. And we're trying not to charge the support groups anything. Right now they are free, and we just need to keep getting the donors or the sponsors, either corporate or otherwise. Or obviously find a counselor who can help, who's accepting new clients. So again, maybe that's at the state level. We reached out to a couple of counselors in the state that we know that we can send some of our folks to if we need to.
Okay, so we only have a couple minutes. We intended to have more time for Q&A, but there was a lot to get through, and I think it's really important for us to cover some of the depression pieces and understand how to talk about those. But please feel free to ask us. We have just a couple slides to close up afterwards, so we'll leave about a minute for ourselves, but we've got a couple minutes if you want to ask us any questions about the organization, about the depression piece, about anything that we've presented.
Ron says the way parents act U8 games may not be fun.
That is true. And so again, we need to understand our referee a little bit, right? If that's
right.
Things that bother them, that's probably not going to be helpful. So that's a really good point.
I love the preseason high school games because at the point for me, I'm like, which dad can I kick out so that the rest of the referees in the season doesn't have to work with, doesn't have to deal with that dad. So that's stress relief for me. I get to banter with the dad and tell him to apologize for his son for missing his first season game or whatever it is. But.
So we actually have a great question in the chat box, which is how does safe sport factor into all of this? Safe sport really focuses more on the abuse that could potentially take place in a sports setting. However, we have had conversations with safe sport, and potentially we could work directly with them because they don't necessarily have the mental health support system that they can help make sure that that abusive situation stops. They can help make sure that that all gets resolved, but they aren't necessarily set up to help with the mental health piece of that. And so when someone, an athlete or anyone, or a referee, anyone in the sport community goes through an experience in which there was some kind of abuse taking place, then they resolve that, but then we can be the support system for how do we get through that to make sure that our mental wellness can then also recover from that situation. So that was a really great question.
Yeah, essentially they've got a whole investigative body within Safe Sport, and we've chatted with them about what happens after the investigation, to the accuser or the accused, right, or the person that may have felt that. And so we're like, we would gladly be able to try and provide some connection points, and again, that pathways to support for all of the folks involved.
Yeah. And another question we have is, are there more proactive ways to prevent mental wellness from becoming a problem? This is exactly what we're all about. One of the main ways to prevent mental wellness from becoming problematic is to catch it early. It is the early intervention. It's the early prevention that is going to be the most helpful. And how do we do this early? We start the conversations. We make it okay for people to talk about. We make it clear that they are not having abnormal feelings, that if they're struggling with something and they can talk about it and they can work through it quickly, even if that means going to see a counselor, going to see a mental health specialist, but if it's early on, before the problem becomes really big, they can learn how to work through some of those pieces. So it is truly us working together as a community. That is how we are going to prevent these things, by talking to each other and working together and making it an okay environment to have these conversations. So these are great questions. We are always happy to take more questions. You see our website here, our email here. If you ever have more questions for us, please reach out and ask. We are going to just quickly go through our 3 main takeaway points from today that we hope that you remember. But always reach out to us if you would like. So Sky, take it away.
So yeah, we like to finish with our takeaways instead of Q&A. And again, we've got 3 takeaways for you is access to mental health training for your referee community. Again, we have said we would obviously gladly do that. We are working with organizations. We've chatted with Rick, and hopefully I suspect we'll be in at national camp in January with US Soccer at the national group. But we want to get out to the States. We want to share this information with folks, and are happy to do that. But if it's not us, there's certainly folks in your community that can do some of these things. Maybe not in a sport specific sort of environment, but definitely do that. Check in on your referee community regularly. Again, who is the referee community? It could be those that are no longer officiating with us as well. And you know that they were struggling, but check in on folks often. Particularly the last 2 years, we've had problems connecting. And then ensure that your referee community has access to mental health and support resources before a crisis comes up. Right? Don't wait till that crisis event. Get those pieces and parts in your state sort of solidified earlier. And maybe it's going to, finding a couple of counselors who can do that. Reaching out to NAMI, or the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee has a list has a registry for mental health providers. We are growing one as well. We just don't have one yet. Again, as I said, maybe there's a referee in your group that's a social worker, a counselor, or a mental health specialist that can provide those things. So again, just a last sort of shameless plug. We are not for profit. There's a donation button on our website, but we absolutely would like corporate sponsors and sort of reaching out to those folks. But more importantly for us, obviously, is we want to share the message. We want to get training and prevent some of these things from happening. So please reach out and let us know. Visit our website, tweet, all those other fun things, right? The social media pieces that help us spread the word to others. We are not soccer specific, so we're looking to share things with others as well.
Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate your attention and your being part of this community.
Margaret, Sky, thank you so much for that. That was very beneficial. I know for myself, listening to all that. I mean, I learned quite a bit from this. I worked in the medical profession for 7 years and still learn something new every day. So thank you. I think it's very important that we discuss this, and hopefully we'll continue this discussion moving forward. I know personally we'll get the link out on the Iowa Referee Committee. We have a website. We'll get that information out there. We'll get in touch and stay in touch with that. So I really appreciate all the work you guys have done to get this up and going.
Thanks for having us all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. In the meantime, so right now we're going to be looking at taking a quick break. It'll be a 30-minute break. So we will come back at 10 o'clock and we'll have Ben Torino and his coaches panel, as well as talking about the national referee shortage and what we can do. So go ahead and take a break. I would log back on. I stay logged in, please, but step back in around 5 minutes or 10 minutes to 10 o'clock or whatever time it is in your area. So about 20 minutes from now.